This is Twisted Passages with award-winning author Marie Sutro. Now, let's take a deep dive into the dark world of psychological thrillers and meet the authors who created them.
Hello, and welcome to Twisted Passages. I'm your host, Marie Sutro, and today we'll be talking to the outstanding thriller author, Steve Anderson, about his new release, Show Game. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I am so excited to dig into this book with you. You gave us so much in such a fast, tightly plotted story. But before I get crazy, can you start us off with a quick overview of what the story is about?
Yeah, sure. In Show Game, there's this self-made, hopefully nonviolent vigilante named Alex who takes it upon themselves to capture some of society's biggest and worst abusers who are getting away with it and put them on trial online and forcing them to confess to their crimes. I can't give away who Alex is, so I'm calling Alex Day, but I hopefully it's a fun reveal for readers and a twist. And this book is somewhat of a new direction for me. I do have a couple crime thrillers in my backlist that aren't very well known, but I usually write historical and espionage thrillers set in the World War II and Cold War eras. There are some similarities that we can talk about later if there's time. But I want to say my wife gave me the idea for this book. I can't say enough about my wife because she when I was thinking about this book, I thought about a lot of the helpers in society, the people on the front lines, your cops and your social workers and first responders. And my brother's a cop. I know some other people, and I know that they get frustrated in seeing certain people in power get away with things. And, you sort of wonder, well, what if we could apply a somewhat just form of, outlaw justice? And so I kind of went there. And I really enjoyed writing it. It was a little bit of I got to live vicariously a little bit that I don't quite get to do when, something's set in World War II. So, yeah.
Well, there's so much to love in this book. And the first place we kind of fall in love is with your protagonist, Owen. Owen is someone who is holding on to structural beliefs in society, specifically about the Fourth Estate. Can you explain a little bit about why you chose to have a journalist as your protagonist in this particular story?
Yeah, that's I love that question because Owen, he's working in this world where he's learned to become at the top of his craft, but that world has completely changed. But he still has these skills that apply, and he's still looking for truth. And the other thing that Alex is doing is also looking for truth. And so Owen is this investigative reporter who's tasked with tracking down Alex and uncovering Alex. But what Owen starts to realize is that this truth might be the same truth, and it might be one that he might have to devote himself to without giving too much away. But I love Owen because I think some of us writers who've been doing it long enough, when we started, it was a much different world in publishing than what it is now. And so we've had to apply new skills from maybe our day jobs and things like that. And that, for me, that's all my characters in all my books. They're always in over their heads a little bit. The espionage writer, Eric Ambler, he kind of started this where you would have a protagonist who isn't a spy, but maybe they're a journalist, and so they apply, whatever skills they have to, helping someone out, uncovering the truth. And Alex also has certain skills that I can't reveal. I wish I could, but if you read it, you'll find out. Yeah, I just love people who are just kind of in over their heads a little bit between a rock and a hard place and just have to figure it out.
You mentioned truth before, and talking about the last 30 to 40 years, our concept in the public of what is true, if we go out and we say, okay, let's poll 1 million people and say, is fact A or fact B true? It feels like, and I could be wrong, but it feels like if we went back 40 years ago, we'd get more people to agree on something like, just something that happened in history, whether it was a volcano erupting somewhere. Or how has that evolution in how polarized we are and how insulated we are with our perceptions of truth, how did that impact the writing of this story?
Yeah, there used to be a time when I was a kid where there was just clear objective truths, and people from all types of society, all types of the political spectrum could just agree on that. And now we're in a different period, and part of Alex's job, beyond some very personal reasons that Alex has that I can't give away, is to make this objective fact very clear. And the only way Alex sees how to do it is to get it straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak. The only way Alex sees how to do it in order to sort of reset truth is to put these people on, I hate the word trial, but it's a presentation of objective truth. Of course, one thing I didn't get into is now we're entering this sort of AI world where people could question what, maybe there's a sequel there. People could question, well, is that objective truth, the objective truth? But for now, while we're all still going, that's where I was going with that. And Owen also, he's going to die on this hill of objective truth, which sort of leads him on his journey in this book.
One of the other things you kind of touched on is the commercialization of information. I think it was always there to some degree, right? With Hearst and Pulitzer going back and forth back in the day. But now there's, everybody's into clickbait. And then there's also these other forms of information like social media, which isn't necessarily vetted at all. Was that, you make Owen, I think it's okay to say he's in his late 30s, right? How difficult was it to get into the mindset of someone who did come up in this intensely social media era and still give him those beliefs about the Fourth Estate and about the integrity of journalism?
You are making me remember that it was pretty tough. We're all well versed in social media now, and I've worked with younger people who that's all they know. But yeah, I had to straddle those two, hopefully in a way to show how truth needs to be wrapped in a certain way. I remember, not that the old days were better, but I remember that stuff that was clearly entertainment or was obviously cuckoo, that was the National Enquirer on the supermarket shelves when you're waiting in line. Like, everyone knew that was just for fun, and there might be some weird stuff on cable access, but it was just clearly, there was a clear line, and there's just not a clear line anymore. And I sympathize a lot for people a little bit younger than us who have to grow up in that, because I'm realizing now that was sort of a golden era where where, you could actually trust the nightly news and things like that. It makes me kind of sad to think about that. Of course, at the time we used to complain about it because there was only 4 channels that you could watch.
Exactly.
You know, and we all couldn't wait for cable to come and all that and the internet. But yeah, he's holding on to that, and I hope I treated it well. I gave it a shot. It's a tough thing to straddle. I think part of the message was this is evolving, and we got to deal with it as it happens.
And in that quest of truth, and in showing these two characters that are different paths along the same road, where they're trying to get to truth, and they're physically going about it in two different ways. The concept of Alex being a vigilante. Where were you personally? Did you lean more towards, hey, sometimes we are in a place where we just need like the Batman character to come in and just fix this for us? Or were you still kind of rooting for Owen, kind of walking that traditional path, trying to get to the right place that way as the author? Or did you just want to show that inherent conflict of where we are today?
That's a great question. I think I'm both of them, but probably leaning slightly toward Owen. I was in the Associated Press briefly, and so I was exposed to the type of people who were, they were all in on the promise of journalism and facts and sources and things like that. But at the same time, I've taken a few chances in my life, I think, and I felt for Alex. I think it's a tie. I think I'm, as we writers do, I think I'm both of them, and hopefully that dynamic showed in the kind of back and forth of the writing. And I do have Alex in first person and Owen in third person, which I don't think I'd ever done before, and I think that helped me a little bit to keep them separate.
I noticed that, and I thought, wow, what was his intent with doing that? And I realized as the chapters went on and I became so vested in each one of them, that it was such a brilliant device for you to use those different POVs, because the vigilante, it's sometimes hard to get into the head of someone like that and say, well, gee, how could they be this far? And look, Owen's going the right way, right? And giving us that opportunity to empathize that much more by putting us in first person, I thought was absolutely brilliant.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I'm an editor too, and you always tell writers, and you always hear that first person can be more emotional, and there were definitely emotional reasons for having Alex in first person.
Now you've got some villains in here. Some are villains that pop in really quick. Some are villains that stay a little bit longer. Your villain work is absolutely amazing. Your villains are everything that people want. The longer term villains were like, hey, what's their motive? Are they good? Are they bad? We're looking for everything down to the personal ticks, everything that you can give us. Is writing villains something you enjoy, because you do it so well?
I hate to say I don't enjoy it more, but I enjoy the challenge of making them human, even though they're horrible. And so, that kind of comes down to the details, and giving them reasons for doing what they do. Some of that's environment. Some of that is, some of it's passed down. Some of the people are wired for that, which is horrifying, because they could have the best parents ever and still just be, a serial killer or whatever, as you know from your books and your research. It's this challenge, and it's sort of this rabbit hole. Like, how can I make them believable and human?
Yeah, they were very human. And again, whether it was personal takes, you're a very cinematic writer. And so I loved the setups that you had for the show game, the way that you created everything from lighting to all of the personal interactions. Everything was absolutely amazing. It was almost like, hey, legitimately, we're on set and something's going to happen because these people have thought this out. The show game itself, how did you come up with the idea for that? Was that your wife's idea as well, or did you have to like kind of dig in?
Yeah, it was my wife's general idea, and then I had to figure out the mechanics of it, and also technology is changing all the time, so you just got to put the book out there and hope it's not dated, immediately. I don't think it is yet, but yeah, I just kind of got obsessed with the details like I normally would with a historical book, and making sure all the details are right. And yeah, thank you. You made my day with that cinematic comment because it's something I really try hard at, and I'm one of these wannabe screenwriters people, so as many of us are. So I love setting the scene without doing too much of it.
Getting back real quick to Owen and Alex, both of them have a superpower, and their superpower is that they're great critical thinkers. And when we get back to this issue of information and how we're processing it in the modern era and how we silo it, right? Um, do you think that critical thinking, what percentage or what level of impact do you think the skill of critical thinking has to do with where we are today?
Um, Everything. I mean, I I'm fairly educated, and I was trained in things like sources and critical thinking and logic and that. And boy, it just really seems like it's been lost at the worst moment when we're being inundated by stuff. And I see stuff all the time online, and I wonder how are people able to process that and make sense of that and see that it's complete BS. Yeah, I guess it, having them both be really intense critical thinkers, I think, is a little bit of a plea on my part to like, let's try, you know, think about where things are coming from and like who's saying what. It goes back to that objective truth thing.
And it was interesting because, like I said, this book was so thought provoking. It's so fun on one side, but then it's very thought provoking, and it sits with you. You could be walking around your house after you finished a chapter or after you finish the book, and those thoughts start bubbling up. And one of the things I was thinking about was there was this time in human history. Let's just take the medieval period. You are a peasant on a farm. The only information you get is if someone comes and tells you the information. So the ability to test that information, the veracity of it, you don't really have much. And to the extent that literacy wasn't at such high rates until more of the modern era, people couldn't even read the Bible to see, oh, is that really what the Bible says, what these people are telling me that it says? That fact that we're now inundated with information, we've got it everywhere at our fingertips. And before, even in the best times, even when the messenger was reliable, even when the news was accurate, you had to wait for someone to either get on a boat or get on a horse or just walk for however long that took. Do you think that the immediacy, is there a correlation between the immediacy that we now have, the volume we have, and the lack of critical thinking being applied to it, do you think?
Yeah, that's a great point, and I think that people are getting everything instantly all the time, and the people that are want to the bad actors out there who want to confuse people and make them act a certain way, they're doubling down with it by instilling fear in everything all the time. So it's like instant information, scares the crap out of you, doesn't give you time to think about anything. And that needs some fixing here. I'm not sure how we're going to do it, but it has been fixed in history. You speak of the medieval period, thinkers came along and others who figured it out. So this book has some dark themes, but oddly, I try to offer a little bit of hope at the end. And so I hope that that's part of it.
There was a lot of hope. And as I said, the characters evolved. I think that's part of the reason it sits with you so long, because the characters continue to sit with you, and their choices and their backgrounds, all of that, it really does. It really percolates for a while. So thank you for such an important read, making us examine ourselves, the world we live in, and maybe what we can do to make it better.
Thanks for reading it.
I loved it. Now, for anyone who hasn't read your work yet, or for folks that Show Game, will be their next big read with you, where is the best place for readers to find you? Is it your website, social media?
Yeah, both. I should preface all this by saying my name is, at least for my age group, is very common, Steve Anderson. So there's a lot of them out there, and if I was to do this again, I'd come up with a fancy pen name. But I'm Steve Anderson. However, because of that, my website is one of the best places to go to get everything you need, and that is Stephen with a PH F. That's my middle initial for Frederick, Anderson, SON. So StephenFAnderson.com. That has all my books and all my stuff. I have a newsletter on, I don't know if people know about Substack. It's a Substack newsletter. You don't have, it's all free. But there's a new social media component on Substack that I'm on called Notes. And it's sort of, it feels a bit like Twitter in the early days without all the weirdos and crap on it. So I'm on there. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I have a Blue Sky account, and I'm thinking about getting on there more. But my handle is almost always Steve A. Writer, WRITER. I didn't even realize there was a pun there when I created it, but there we are. Yeah. I think those are the main places.
Great. I understand there's a feline assistant in your home. Is it just one feline assistant, or are there multiples?
Monty was here. He's my assistant, and also his sister Trina. That's short for Katrina. Is my other assistant. I wish they'd show up, but knowing that I'm on a podcast, of course you'd think they would show up and mess with it, but they're not. So
you've been granted a reprieve.
Apparently, yeah, taking pity on me.
Wonderful. Again, Show Game, an awesome read. So much fun. Thank you, Steve, for this read. Thank you for coming and sharing today.
Thank you. It was really great discussion.
And thank you all for joining me on this episode of Twisted Passages. We hope to see you next time.